You walk into your apartment hallway and you look down and see a man stumbling around. As he approaches, you notice that his arm is just covered in teeth, and he's talking about his something going on, but these teeth have just grown all over and now he wants to bite you. As you deal with this man, you then explore and learn the horror of what exactly happened just in the apartment down the hall. The baby underwent some sort of transformation, starting to grow teeth all over its body, and upon doing so, just started going around and biting the rest of the family members. And with every single bite, suddenly the family members, they started growing teeth of their own in those individual areas, starting to spread all throughout their bodies, transforming it into these endless jaws and mouths that are all just ready to feed on things. And at the end of it all, this baby tries to come for you as well, except, you know what, you're able to fend it off, thankfully. And hey, you're not growing any teeth, so that's usually a good sign. But then you meet the little toddler, Benjamin, where you get the option of playing toy soldiers with him before he passes on, just completely engulfed by the teeth. It's a bittersweet moment where the innocence of a child is shown through what is basically a textbook monstrosity of a horror story of multiplying teeth spreading throughout all of the individuals in this house. This is one of the first moments in the video game Look Outside where you can act compassionately towards any of the characters in the game. Hi everyone, my name is Marks, and today we're going to be talking about the game Look Outside, and more specifically, why I think the moral of this story is rooted deeply in compassion. Look Outside was released in 2025 and developed by Francis Calome, originally starting out as one of those little indie projects that suddenly evolved into an entire game. And what it is you play as Sam, or whatever you decide to call your character, as you walk around and experience all of these little eldritch horror moments that have taken over this apartment, because every single time somebody looks outside, they undergo some sort of grotesque transformation into some sort of monstrosity that exists and for you to stumble upon. But as you play through the game and kind of deal with these monstrosities, at first just honestly being terrified and interested in what exactly these transformations are, you do feel that there is a little bit of a turning point where the people who have changed into these monsters, they look terrifying and all of that type of stuff, but at the end of the day, they're just other human beings. And now I want to introduce everybody to Fredric's story, who lives on the first floor and has undergone some pretty interesting changes. Fredric was a painter who looked outside and then suddenly started painting all of these different little paintings that all started to come to life. The thing is, all of these paintings are of Fred himself, and as they jumped out of the paintings, they took a little part of his personality alongside with them, just exploring the world in these new bodies. And so as part of the main quest, when you're trying to find some of these offerings for the visitor, you can choose to involve yourself in Fred's little story over here and choose which Freds more or less will stay alive at the end of all of it. The thing is, all of these Freds are also telepathically connected, and some of them want to eliminate all of the others so they can be the only Fred that remains, and thus the true Fred at the end of it. Some of these Freds are a little bit more obvious about it, like Toxic Fred, who will try and manipulate you into actively trying to kill the monsters, or he'll try and kill you. But then there's just other Freds, like Mouth Fred, who is a Fred covered in all of these crazy mouths with gnawing teeth, but really wants to just try and figure out a new way forwards in life, despite all of these transformations that have undergone his body. It doesn't stop there. There's another Fred who is just holed himself up inside of a closet because he senses that the other Freds want to take out the other Freds, and so he is just simply hiding for his own life. There's another Fred as well who is just kind of stuck in this white form, can't leave the bathroom or anything like that, but just wants to use the newfound form in order to help and heal people, even your own party, as long as you can kind of visit that Fred once per day. But the real Fred is actually locked in a back room, who now has 4 individual arms, so definitely not that human anymore, and upon getting his face back, wants you to eliminate all of the other Freds because he feels that he is responsible for unleashing all of these monstrosities into the world. And so it raises a really interesting question. Which Fred do you want to keep alive? Is it the real Fred just because he's the original? But at this point, you know that he's no longer human because he's got all of these hands and anything that he paints can come to life. But at the same time, the Fred that heals you. I mean, this Fred just simply wants to exist and wants to help out all of the other people and monsters that are around. Make sure that everyone is more happy and, well, healthy. Regardless of your decision, at the end of the day, each of these Freds are no longer human and have all transformed into these new eldritch beings. And I think that this is a metaphor for human beings too, outside of the game completely, because it's all too often that we see people in our own lives who we've known for years and you feel like you know them so darn well, And as time goes on, people are bound to change into different things that we may no longer recognize as themselves. And even if they change, I don't want to put any value judgments on things or anything. They still deserve to be treated with compassion and not just labeled as a monster or somebody different immediately and then just kind of discarded as such. Similar to the Freds, if you think about it, if the player labels all of these different Freds as monsters, since none of them truly are what we would recognize traditionally as a human anymore, I mean, eliminating all the Freds makes sense. Somewhere inside of us, that doesn't feel right. And it's pushing the player to really reconsider that even though these Freds might look like monsters, well, they really aren't monsters and should be treated with compassion despite their transformations. And even though the real Fred might urge you to actually go in and kill all the rest, you can simply just decline and choose which Freds you want to keep alive throughout all of them that you may deem are worth saving and worth continued existence for. And I think that the ending also reinforces that idea that despite looking or being perceived as something different, something monstrous, well, even the visitor deserves compassion in this sense. So if you get to the end of the game and have done everything correctly, and on top of that too, defeat all the cultists, then you actually get to meet the visitor and interact with the thing that is causing all of this chaos on planet Earth. And when the visitor perceives your player, it's like the visitor first gains consciousness for the first time. And the first thing that the visitor does when gaining this consciousness through communicating with the player is realize that it is harming the planet and immediately decides to leave because that was not the original intention of what it wanted to do. I find it interesting that the first thing that the visitor gets is compassion for our planet and realizes that it is the problem and thus needs to leave because it's causing more damage than any good that could come from anything the visitor would do to Earth. It's through this simple communication with just another being that compassion is the first thing that kind of pops out for this massive eldritch god. And despite understanding that there are differences and they might be two separate beings that exist completely separate, one massive in scale and one so infinitely small in relative space, the visitor still treats Sam exactly as an equal and addresses him as such and discusses everything as such. It's that level of respect that you wouldn't expect this massive eldritch god to give to a single mortal man. And in that best ending, Sam, the player character, gets transformed into this massive monster that continues to grow and grow and grow until it consumes the world with tentacles and mouths and eyes just in all over the place. Despite this transformation, despite continuing to grow, he retains his own humanity and instead becomes one of the most compassionate beings on the entire planet. From helping people to rebuilding all of the damage that has been done to providing supplies and ultimately healing the world from anything that the visitor had unintentionally caused in its course towards Earth. And it's right here that the game really showcases that even if someone changes into a monster, something that is definitely different than what, once again, we would just classify as an original human being, turns out they can be more human than even some humans can be. So next time you see somebody who might have changed a lot or done something that makes you want to label them as a monster, try reconsidering treating them with a little bit of compassion and see beyond their label, because we lose so much of our own humanity when we just choose to judge people based on their outward appearance or one singular event that might have happened in their lifetime. All right, that wraps up this video. Highly recommend you play Look Outside. I know I gave a little bit of spoilers in there, but honestly, this game is just jam-packed with all of these mini eldritch horror stories just all throughout the entire apartment, waiting for you to discover them. And I was like instantly hooked and just kind of delving in and exploring all of the different things that the developer has done an excellent job at writing. But okay, let me know down in the comments below if you enjoyed this video and which one of your monsters was your favorite in Look Outside. And have you even heard of Look Outside? It's a pretty small indie game, but I'm once again super happy that I found it, and it's only like $10 on Steam, so I'd highly recommend you go check it out. That is going to wrap up this video. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you thought that this was a good one. And you know, I'm going to start doing a little bit more game analysis. I think more on thematic stuff rather than the gameplay things. But in the meantime, while I have you here, why not check out this video that I've got queued up, because I think you might just like it. Eldritch horror. It's a fun little subgenre of horror, which might be better known as cosmic horror, Lovecraftian horror, but deals with themes about just being so afraid of the great unknown. And really, Eldritch horror has touched all sorts of different mediums, mostly thinking about like Lovecraft's stories and, of course, video games.